What's up, Shred Sexies? Welcome back. Death to the Fingers. Just wondering if anybody else saw that tribute to Ozzy recently that kind of, whatever, got a big social media push. I mean, I saw it on the Twitters. I'm sure people probably saw it on Facebook if you do that. Where else do you go? Reddit? Is that like a thing? Or, I mean, I'm so illiterate when it comes to the internet now because it's just not fun. It feels like a human petting zoo to me in most cases where you're just managed. You know what I mean? The closest I can put my finger on it would be that scene from The Matrix when those machines are harvesting the children in the fields. It's kind of like that. We're managed, we're controlled, manipulated at will. So you're not really allowed to see the big puzzle or even know the constituent parts. It's like a big giant gray fog out there that says terra incognito. And it's really sad. And that's just it. When I was watching this Aussie tribute, man, it hit me so hard how contrived everything has become. You know what I mean? Like, I remember how exciting it was back in the 80s when metal started breaking through after the absolute death chokehold disco and Christian music and Christian-based values and stuff, like goody two-shoes music that wasn't really dangerous, that also wasn't dad rock, you know what I mean? And, dad rock for us, which would have been like, the yacht rock stuff, which is awesome, don't get me wrong, Zeppelin and all the rest of the classics, it's great, but once you listen to Black Sabbath, I'm like, it's game over, right? I remember I was down at the creek. I think I was coming home from school. I was just a tiny kid, found the tape of Black Sabbath that was laying on the ground, picked it up, took it home, put it on my ghetto blaster and played it. And there's like one of the tunes where Tony just goes off on a solo. It's just solo guitar where he's just soloing, just riffing. And I was like, I don't understand this music. And that's the first thing I can think about with respect to Sabbath until like high school, when I could actually properly enjoy the music as I like it too, you know what I mean, whatever, and then play along with it and understand it and stuff like that. So that's just it. There was this energy, vitality, because it was new and fresh. But then I saw the VMAs one, and it was just, like, first off, I mean, it sounded great. I don't want to disparage the performance. All the performances were pretty decent. Really, I guess. I mean, we'll talk about the Youngblood thing in a sec, but, and that's the part that kind of was like, okay. But the other thing is like, really? Crazy Train? And all the classics. I mean, the man has 13 albums. I'm like, who are you trying to appeal to? That's why nobody in the metal sphere, per se, didn't tuned in during the broadcast, because we could just see snippets of it released on the internet. Right? As if anybody cares to hear like Crazy Train again. It doesn't matter if it's Nuno on guitar. And I was like, yeah, show me Nuno. And then, of course, they immediately go to the singers and stuff. And it's just, oh, okay. And yeah, it sounded blistering. See the faces on the people in the audience because they're playing live. They're like, wow. You mean you don't just use the PA or whatever? There's an actual like rock band there. Oh, and Nuno was just absolutely rocking it, man. What a guitar player. Wow. What a guitar player. Pretty much nail almost any style of music. And then his own music is badass as shit. And there's a huge spread with respect to what kind of music he writes. From like the sort of cheesier 80s metal stuff to like really deep shit that they were doing on Extreme 3. So, I mean, it's pretty awesome. But, like, again, Aerosmith's been boiled down to like, Joe Perry and Steven Tyler. I mean, I didn't actually notice if it was the rest of the band because I couldn't really tell because all they ever showed was the singers and Joe was always standing next to fucking Steven. So, I mean, right, those guys have like a thing with the limelight. No one of them can overshadow the other because I guess that must be the whatever controlling powers of the band. It's pretty funny. But again, it was just Aerosmith, like again, how many times has Aerosmith played the VMAs? Since the 90s. Isn't it time for somebody new? And then to be like, yeah, here's our tribute to Ozzy, one of the foundational dudes that got us to actually, you know what I mean? Get into music and start playing a band and whatnot. And then they break into Children of the Grave for the intro and stuff. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden you get like the whole spin-off of Caius and that idea, with just the grooviness of it. And the sort of repetitiveness of it just being the thing that actually propels the music. And that would have been a legendary performance. Somebody who actually took the original source material and sort of transmitted it through their lens to create something new and unique that everybody could enjoy with equally sort of recognizable stuff. You know what I mean? And it didn't have to be Sabbath stuff. It could be stuff from Ozzy's own catalog. But honestly, I'm just like, I'm sorry. There's up to a point, maybe Osmosis. Really, that's the end of Ozzy's career. After Osmosis, and basically it feels like the Zakk Wylde sort of Ozzy Osbourne partnership breaks finally. That's it. It's done. That's just it. It's the Ozzy show. It's never about someone else. So he takes all the cake. And obviously that rubbed everybody the wrong way. It's the same thing with Whitesnake. I mean, they just had... It's not about the egos. It's about who controls the dough. And that's just the business world coming through. And that's when, things start to fall apart, which is why you shouldn't do that stuff, right? Which is why it shouldn't be a priority. But just trotting out the dinosaurs, doesn't matter how cool the music is. It's just kind of pointless. That doesn't bring new blood to the scene. And it's actually kind of disrespectful to his memory because you're removing the opportunity to expose people to new bands that may have a really cool sort of spin on music and can take this source material and sort of use that in a tribute on live TV to appeal to a whole new, wider audience or the internet or whatever. So you know what I mean? Like, you wonder why the music industry is dying is because they're just incapable of actually thinking beyond the dollars and cents to be like, this is how you keep the scene alive. You got to keep feeding the fire. You can't just start the fire and then, get it down to like the last few embers and be there furiously sort of like trying to keep those last two embers. You have to keep throwing more logs on there. And of course, there's going to be casualties, if you will, where you end up in your career being reduced down to ash and you're part of the larger ecosystem, but now you're the foundation of the fire pit. Where the wood is burning and the real action is happening. That's a young man's game. That's the way it's always been. It's with like that with athletes. It's like that with musicians. It's like that with scientists. And there are outlier cases where that's not always true, but it's the exception to the rule. So you see all the sort of like all the telltale signs of, instead of it being civilizational decay or whatever you want to call that, it's more about the industry itself just contracting to the point of being so protectionist that they can no longer actually function in the free market because they don't actually produce a product that anybody would be worth investing into. You got all the money, you got all the infrastructure, you can put on the big show. Sure. Nobody watched it. And more importantly, nobody cared. And you didn't make any more album sales, that's for sure. Like, you know, we just did the Aussie tribute thing. Where was the VH1 and MTV and all those people there? You know what I mean? Or whatever it was. Because I saw that mostly being promoted by the metal community, because it was, even still, you know, I mean, it was for a good cause, so I don't want to disparage it or anything like that. It's none of my business, but it seemed a little commercial to me. Again, not really about the music. It's about raising money for charity, which is fine, but we should be honoring the man in his life and his creative outputs. And it should have been kind of more of a solemn event. A great musician died. What better way to honor him than with the very music that he created, which already creates this incredibly oppressive atmosphere, and use that to enhance it, to really have a moment with thousands or tens of thousands of people, to really dig into the meat and potatoes of it. You know, it's not an all-day event. It's 50,000 or 100,000 people or whatever they can handle getting into this one particular event. The show goes on for like 3 hours and that's it. It's over. There's no alcohol, you know. It's water. You can get food. It's not about getting shit-faced or anything like that. About honoring the man's legacy. And then you can go home and get drunk all you want, like you have since you've been 20 to Black Sabbath. You know what I mean? Like, that's my thing, is it doesn't seem like anything's sacred anymore. The more we just take it for granted, I guess, just like these people have taken the music industry for granted, and now the hardcore music people that actually supported them for decades and decades by buying the media over and over and over again and engaging with them, are just like, why would I do that anymore? What, so I can watch you do Crazy Train for the 70 millionth time? I mean, at one point in time at the local radio station, people started to complain on air. They'd be like, how come you play the same 15 songs every single day? That was like 20 years ago, right? So I'm just like, you see what I'm saying? It goes so far back. And look at radio. It's fractions of what it used to be. Again, also completely controlled by corporate interests. So there has to be some sort of mechanism there to be like, we want to kind of destroy this deeply useful and fertile thing. Think of all the people that used to work in that industry, doing the broadcasts and maintaining the infrastructure. I you know what I mean? If there was an emergency or something like that and you needed to get the information out, well, now it's all in the hands of like 2 companies and not just a bunch of good meaning people that might be like, oh yeah, we got to get the message out, man. They're like, oh no, we got to contain so we don't get sued. You see the difference? And that's kind of like, I know it's extreme, but that's the point. It's the same thing with the music industry, the same people making these decisions. You're not really serious in thinking I would take somebody like Youngblood as like a person. I'd be like, that's an up and coming metal artist. Look, kid, you do your thing, man, enjoying the limelight. But to me, you look like the dark haired version of Machine Gun Kelly. Now that they're done with him because he's no longer with Megan Fox, so they can't leech off that. Right? Use the hotness factor. They're just going to throw this kid in. And although did he do a good job? It was okay. You know, is it anything to write home to mom? No. When I watched the Arion stuff called Star One on DVD and I saw Russell Allen just nail his vocal parts, that gave me goosebumps. And I actually watched that video like probably 25 times over the span of the next 2 years, just to be like marveling at how awesome this concert was. I was just like, man, you know what I mean? once in a lifetime opportunity to see some of the best musicians ever just knock it out of the park. Basically perfect renditions of these where you're just like, fuck, that good. And that's just it. It was music. It wasn't just like, oh, go in there and get guttural. They had some extreme moments for sure, but it was more about the experience, like a real live experience like we did back in the early 80s where there was like keyboard interludes and they kind of did more off the cuff stuff. It wasn't like, oh, let's do a weird medley or something. That was like the effect of Dream Theater. We'll take our own music and do a medley, or other people's music and do a medley. Instead, it was just them playing, It was like the Rush ethos where they're just like, just jam, bro. And that's almost dead. You can see that from the YouTube stuff. A lot of the music channels turned into this, oh, well, you have to start to subdivide the polyrhythms. And it's just like, look, man, if you're getting overly formulaic about it, you're missing some of the best parts about just playing the instrument. It's not supposed to be a science. There's a science behind it that kind of roughly outlines some evident truths, not rules, truths. These chords sound good together. Yep, that's true. These ones don't. Also true. Okay, so that's my point. People like try to dissect music with a scalpel or whatever it is. It doesn't work that way. That's why people fail so often at music, is they try to turn it into some sort of cerebral activity. Without the heart and the soul, there is no musician. That's where it comes from. If you haven't secretly cried at one of your like movies you watch, you're like, remember when I watched this as a kid, and you don't start getting choked up at the same part again, or something like that, you probably don't really have what it takes to be a musician. Even though that sounds incredibly feminine. You know what I mean? But that's just it. That's the very wellspring from which a lot of music it flows from. And the most beautiful music we have evokes those types of imagery, right? Clair de Lune and so many other ones like that, where you're just like, man, is that one pretty piece of music? Johann Sebastian Bach, I heard one recently on Rick Beato. Was a piece where they did it on two pianos. It was almost indistinguishable. I was like, wow, the synchronicity there is just mind-boggling. So you know what I mean? That's kind of like an important recognition. And when you look at something like the VH1 stuff, it was, or whatever, the VMA Awards, it's so soulless and plasticky that it could never exude that. That's the thing. Back in the old days, it was just a bunch of musicians that actually played real music, getting together, getting drunk, and then playing music really at one of these things. It was a little more scripted, but you could see from the earlier days where it went off. Like, if you ever watch, I thought the roast idea was something that we came up with, whatever, in the late 80s or 90s or something. And a lot of them are really good, especially when they were doing it with the athletes and stuff. But that goes way back into like the late night show with Johnny Carson and stuff. Those type people, Bob Hope, and they get together and roast the big guys like Sinatra and all these other giant Hollywood bigwigs. And you watch those ones, and they're just absolutely crazy, man. And you see how it really was. And that's the thing. You can see like it was just like the boys getting together and just swinging for the fences, taking each other down, humbling them. Basically the same function as a court gesture would basically serve as, you know what I mean? Just humble the person badly by making them embarrassed, just kind of joking around and whatnot. But it's all in good fun, and it's a necessary process, obviously. But even in the 80s and stuff, in the 90s, it was still pretty extreme, but then they just neutered it. Like, now you can't even see stuff like that unless it's at a comedy show. And it's like, you usually It's like, oh, see who can burn the other person the best with no preparation. Just look at each other and just start slinging insults. Not quite the same. I like it when intelligent, I was going to say musicians, but intelligent comedians basically have a chance to think about the source material and then they just absolutely light them up. Especially with those later ones, man. Holy smokes, they were just the wild, wild west. These people went absolutely nuclear on each other. That one about Patrice O'Neill, I'll leave it there. Like, wow, holy smokes, that's just crazy. So, if you know, you know. Anyways, it's the total degradation of the spirit of the music itself that's caused this insane sort of drop-off in interest, in the desire. I saw a post on Twitter where a guy was like, oh, my new guitar students, they don't want to learn anything interesting. It's all shit. Whatever. I'm just like, oh, okay. So, you know what I mean? They have no one to inspire them. Like, who would be inspired by Machine Gun Kelly's music? To be like, I want to be like Warren DeMartini or George Lynch. That's just crazy. And so, you know, another casualty in the whatever, the war to mediocrity, I guess, you know, like, let's just destroy all greatness and bring it down to the lowest common denominator so nobody can feel special anymore. Wow. Wherever I heard that before? Oh, communism. That's where. Weird. Anyways, and now you're going to see the last straw too. I saw some more crazy stuff about YouTube. Like huge channels now with millions of viewers basically being like, our views have halved. Talking to the channels that have like whatever 750 to 1 million subscribers, right? They're like, uh-oh. They're like ding, 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 ringing the church bells. The Tartars are coming. I mean, you know, once YouTube goes down, realistically speaking, the last bastion of true creative freedom, even though think about how brutally it's been restricted. Like the last 4 music channels that I followed have not uploaded a video in 6 months. And I checked their channel beforehand. They actually were uploading videos before then pretty regularly, once a month. Now it's not even once every 6 months. And they're probably abandoned. Here's the thing, the channel's still up. So it's going to get scraped by AI and then they're just going to repackage that stuff and fire it out the door as YouTube premium stuff. And you're going to pay $12 a month and then watch advertisements and then watch this AI slop, showing you what somebody spent probably a month building and probably explain better. You know, because AI doesn't quite replicate. It's like a game of telephone with AI. It's hilarious. Can't even draw a real guitar. You ever seen the thumbs? They're hilarious. It's just, that's why I'm not really investing into it, because if I make the cool thumbs and stuff, it'll just scrape all the artwork and just use my own moves against me. So you fight AI by using AI. But the game's up, man. I would imagine that most of the decent YouTubers will just quit altogether. Like the music YouTube thing has been hollowed out massively. And even the sort of appeal, if you will, for people to consume music on YouTube, they go to YouTube to find new music. But when they want to listen to it, they go to Spotify, which is just as bad, right? They did that whole AI stuff that Rick Beato talked about. So again, same exact parallel. Spotify probably got together with Suno or whoever it is and was like, hey, let's get together and collaborate. And they're like, yeah. And they got together, was like, oh, let's do this. And then they start creating bands and music, and if you will. And in the early days, they went through the trouble of creating a backstory like the CIA would in a spy movie. But now they're just like, we don't care if people know this is a fake band. And then they promote it and they put it on playlists and they make money from it, which just squeezes out all of the actual human being artists, which I told people years ago to abandon Spotify. And if you had done it like 4 years ago, like I told you to, they would not have accumulated this much power. And now you wouldn't be totaled. You would have diversified the music market instead of it being like 3 places, essentially YouTube, Spotify, And then whatever sort of mainstream media outlet is doing the music thing now, and that's probably just one apparatus broken up into a whole bunch of stupid little tentacles, if they even do that anymore. I mean, it's probably just like some jukebox nonsense. Just play this shit over and over, but now it's got a video with it, with the high fidelity sort of audio. That's hilarious. So, you know what I mean? Oh, then there's the retro channel where you can watch them in their original shitty form. So, you know, come on, let's just be real here. The wheels are coming off for sure, but I just noticed that's why when you watch these contrived performances where they perform the same song as some sort of like sad homage to one of the greatest metal musicians ever, and it's such a waste. Imagine if you took those four musicians, the drummer, Nuno, the bass player and stuff like that, and the singer or singers, and you're like, boys, we're going to fly you down here, all expenses paid, for like 3 days, and we want you to get together for a couple days and come up with like a 10-minute medley of Aussie tunes that you think would best represent his career and how it influenced you. Now, which one would you rather have? That? Where these guys got together for a couple days, the best musicians in the world, well, let's hammer out some Sabbath stuff that we've been playing for 25 years, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem, sorry. Or this, oh, here, just do the Randy Rhoads version again, but with Nuno. And yeah, he does his Nuno things for sure, but you know what I mean? Is that what Nuno would have chosen if they're like, just pick anyone? Do you think he would have chosen that one, or he'd be like, I think I want to go a different way? I'm thinking he probably would have said that because he's like, so many other people have done this. I might be able to do something else that could be pretty cool too, because he's just that great of a musician. But that's what I mean. That was the old way of doing things, and now that's gone. Unfortunately. And ultimately, it'll be destroyed because of it, because it's not that the musicians will just disappear or whatever else, so they won't make music. It's just there's no marketplace for them to engage in anymore where they have a chance to actually ply their trade. What is the point of having an electrical license if you're not allowed to work anywhere or even hold the tools? You know what I mean? It's just, it's a fool's errand, and that's just it. Now most of those people are going to quit YouTube, and they'll probably start deleting their videos too, to be like, fight back against the AI stuff, or at least that's what I would hope. Because it's just going to get bad from here, and it'll be almost instantaneous. It'll be like, this kind of sucks, and it's been sucking for a while, and then just one day, boom. Like, I just had to upgrade to Windows 11. It's basically Windows 10 with now rounded corners and some more annoying functions. Wow. Yay. This is so much better. And I'm not seeing any increase in functionality or workflow or anything else. It actually, in certain ways, I have to learn new things because they made changes to something that had been the same for like 20 years. Just silly. But when they made me do the update and stuff like that, essentially it was like, you have to update right now. And it's true. If you don't update your computer, then when you don't receive the updates, it just, your computer starts to become incompatible with operating on the internet. That's why old technology doesn't really work that well on the new technological platforms, because they keep making alterations to ensure that you can't. It's not backwards compatible. You ever notice that? Nothing's backwards compatible. I watched a David Nosey video where he built this crazy PC, but he couldn't hook it up because they don't make the connection anymore. They took it off. I was just like, holy smokes. Ooh. You know what I mean? Like, why would you do that? This standard for 20 years and then be like, yeah, no, we took it off because it was ugly or whatever, aesthetically speaking, done. So, listen, I could go on and on and on, but I would just say, like, listen, this video is not doom and gloom. It's just to prepare people for the obvious. Like, things are changing. People are changing. The way things used to be are not the way they're going to be in the future, because people just don't see the point in doing it anymore. When there's no incentive to sort of receive a certain amount of satisfaction from something, why would you keep doing it? I just talked about that in the last video. That's the whole point. Like, it's not about getting views, although that can be exciting, I guess, or likes or whatever it is. In a lot of ways, it's just having a community and talking to people and having an outlet to communicate with others, like-minded individuals, about a topic we're all interested in. In this case, instead of it doing a forum or a chat group or whatever it is, we make videos. And in the old days, we used to talk in the comments and sort of talk about new stuff, but that's basically gone too. Like, I honestly only believe there's probably 200 real human beings following this channel. The 600, that's just whatever inflated bot numbers and stuff. And no, there's no disrespect to anybody if I'm totally wrong, but yeah, you know what I mean? Like, let's just be real. It's just another mechanism built into social media to get people to get on the little sort of making content sort of merry-go-round, and then you just it turns into a mill. You got to grind away. And so there it is, right? It just struck me as being like, this is the decadence of our ways, if you will, in taking for granted the fact that we don't actually have to innovate, have finally hit full apex. And now it's so brutally obvious that it's just ridiculous. It doesn't matter how you dress it up. It's just, it can't be ignored anymore. I just felt an overwhelming sense of sadness, because one of the most important things that ever existed in my entire life is just in one sort of night been rendered to be like, this has-been sort of hackneyed joke. You know what I mean? Of the actual thing that it used to be and that we all fell in love with. And that's a metal red pill of all metal red pills. It's just, damn. See you in the next one.